All right, we are Team 8. We will be doing game design with Unreal Engine. I'm Wyatt Warren. I'm the team leader. You can see information about me up there. I have experience doing game design on my own and for my personal projects in the Godot engine. Uh, and I will be doing game design, game development, and also some of the artwork for our project.
Thank you. I am Joshua Smith, and I am born right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My hobbies include solving puzzles and playing video games. My I am fluent in languages like Java, Python, and C, and I've also touched on HTML, CSS, SQL, as well as JavaScript. My roles in this project will be a front end and back end co-developer, as well as being a co-artist.
Hello. Okay. Uh, my name is Excel. I was born in Nigeria. My hobbies are music, movies, playing games, being a general nerd. I'm experienced in most modern programming languages, and on this project, I'll be acting primarily as a game designer, systems engineer, and a little bit on the UI UX team.
I'm Dylan. I was born in Huntington, Indiana. Um, my hobbies are reading, video games, tabletop role-playing games. I'm familiar with languages like C++, Java, C, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And my role in this project is going to be that of a kind of front-end, back-end co-developer.
Hello, I am Henry Zhao with an A. My hobby is 2D art, comic creation, and audio manipulation and gaming, of course. I'm into like Python, the C family, JavaScript, and HTML/CSS. This role, I'll be the code artist, concept developer, and general programmer of the game.
Hello everyone, my name is Om. I'm from Delhi, India. Here are my few hobbies. And my role in this project is going to be front-end, back-end co-developer and game programmer. For sponsor, let me introduce our sponsor for this project, Agapito Game Studios. They're located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Composed primarily of student alumni from Purdue Fort Wayne. They are involved in our project because they'll be helping us with our industry level requirements and providing professional guidance. Moving on to the next slide. These are the components that we'll be covering in this presentation. The problem statement we are addressing is quite straightforward. We'll be making a playable video game covering all the requirements provided by the game studio. Our goal is to deliver a game with the key components like main menu, AI systems, gaming loops, and progress tracking systems.
So the game that we're going to make will be a relatively top-down roguelite. It'll be 3D and 2D, a mixture. So like a 3D environment with 2D sprites and assets in it. In our game, you're going to be playing as a small like piece of a alien hive mind, and what you're doing is you are infiltrating this facility to try to find the rest of your alien hive mind and reconnect to them. In doing so, your main ability is that you will take over the bodies of the guards and whatnot of the facility and use them, to combat and progress through your mission. So some of the main mechanics we have that the bodies will, decompose over time. So that way the player will have to switch between them and stay active and have an active play style. We'll be using procedurally generated levels with, different types of enemies and whatnot and difficulties that will progress over time. And there will also be stealth mechanics, as when the player is in their true form, they'll be very vulnerable, so they'll have to stay hidden while they are not possessing a body. And these are some of the artworks from concept art that some of our artists have done.
Hello? Okay, awesome. Well, that brings us to the core requirements for our game. These are set by our sponsor, and they look plentiful, but it's pretty simple. So first of all, what game doesn't have a main menu, right? So we'll have to include that as it will showcase our title and also some art for the game before the player starts. And from the main menu, the player can choose to tamper with settings, for example, changing the screen resolution and the volume, etc. And also the player can obviously, while they're playing the game, pause and change at any time. And next, we'll need to have a creative logo design and name for our studio so that we can showcase that at the start of the game and players know who made it. Of course, we'll need to provide functionality for saving and loading wherever applicable. And graphically, we'll need to provide particle effects as well as lighting and emission systems that will just make the game look better. Now on to the meat and potatoes. We need a functioning game loop that's interesting, which encapsulates the core of our team's vision. And this involves having an AI system of enemies in which the will attack the player, they'll compete against them, or just otherwise beguile the player throughout. And following that, we'll need to have a minimum of a start state, for example, when the player starts a level, as well as a win-loss state. So if the player dies, they'll have to restart, and when they pass through a level, that'll count as a win. Now, next, we'll need a system that allows the player to keep track of their progress. This will be pretty simple. Just as the player moves on through levels, that'll be their progress as they get closer to the end. And now finally, we'll need to use an industry standard game engine. For this project, we have decided on using Unreal. Now, onwards are optional features, which if we find ourselves with extra time, we can look towards implementing these. The first one being a multiplayer game mode, where we could potentially have two players connect to each other and compete in a randomly or procedurally generated arena. Next, we can include difficulty modes for if a player wants an easier or a harder time, we can tamper with things like and respawn rates, as well as just making them weaker in general. Now, next, more interesting, is extended level variety, where we can implement extra zones that the player will pass through into as they navigate the game. And these zones will include unique creatures, obstacles, as well as environment, and then the art that goes with that. And to complement these new zones, we can include bosses that the player have to fight to produce, to continue to the next zone. And these will have their own unique challenges and puzzles. And now finally, of course, we can add extra player abilities where we can give the player extra creative potential for how they want to conduct stealth or combat. And next, I'll bring it to Excel. We'll talk about the pitch.
Okay, so this is our game. In our game, our game is a fast-paced 2D roguelike, taking inspiration from games like Dead Cells and Carrion. You are a fragment of what we call the Hive, and your goal is to escape this high-tech facility. But luckily for you, you have the ability to hop from one body to another. But you have to be careful. Your hosts decay over time, and no matter what, you can't be seen, or you'll be squished. This is Body Snatcher. Work in progress.
So for the technology that we're going to be using, of course, we're going to be using Unreal Engine 5. That's the engine for Fortnite. And we'll be using Visual Studio, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, as well as GitHub for our C++ coding and our version control. And we're going to be using a couple of tools called Crocodile 3D and Sprite. Crocodile 3D is going to be, I believe, how we're planning on building our environments, the 3D environments that our 2D sprites are going to be traveling through. And Sprite is going to be more of the actual player sprites and enemy sprites, as well as some of our other art assets. And some of the tools we're using to make all this a little easier, the documentation for Unreal Engine, we've been exploring a little bit of that already. Draw.io, I believe you used that the other day for one of our state diagrams. Nuclino is where all of our game design documents are currently living, and Jira is going to be our biggest project management tool.
And some of the challenges we expect to face are: one, we are mostly new to game development or Unreal itself. So we have to go through the learning curve. We have limited time to build out all our features, and we have to figure out how to work together as a team and manage our schedules and also avoid scope creep.
So for the first semester, we're currently in concept development. We get all ideas down, the concept art, the general gameplay of what we want and all that. And afterwards, we'll make an initial skeleton, which is just physics, just mechanics, no assets, no nothing, just bare bones. But once that is established, we'll make a working prototype that has assets, that has a gameplay loop that a person can play without it crashing. And once that works, we will hopefully have a closed playtest where friends and family can play the game and show us the bugs and critique our work and all that work. Once semester 2 rolls around, we'll review what we learned, what we want, what direction we want to take the actual thing. And once we get all that nailed down, we'll do a refined prototype, which actually should be good, unlike the working progress. And once that is complete, we'll do an open playtest where the public can join in on the fun. And once we've crushed all those bugs, we'll make the full release and be done with this little project. But of course, all things come with risk. And especially with game development, the biggest one is project creep, where we have infinite ideas and we just cannot fit them all because we dream too big. And if we dream too big, we'll need to do some crunch, some last minute work to actually have a product to showcase our sponsor and not get a failing grade. But even with crunch, there's a chance we fail to deliver, where we promise something like, oh, we want 15 bosses, we're going to do like 5, or like we want 3 hours of gameplay and we have 1, all that, you know. The chance of failure everywhere.
Do we have any questions? Yes. Single player. Yeah, single player, but I think potentially optionally we might look into that, but single player. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so from left to right, it was me, Josh, and then Henry. Yes. Yeah, probably Steam if we have something that's, good and finished and ready. Okay. Yes.
Ultimately, we'll have like a story where the player navigates through a chain of levels and in the end wins the game. And depending on just how much time we have for the game, we'll add on to levels and add different zones, different challenges. And ultimately, we just want to showcase the body hopper mechanic where the player has to take control of enemies and use them to solve puzzles or you do combat to pass through these levels. Most of this is original. We were given pretty full creative control on the idea.
For that, we're taking primarily inspiration from Dead Cells. So it'd be a similar format of you die, you lose everything. You have to pick between a few different helper like abilities. Then you have to go through the levels and try and get to the end of it, the boss fight.